withdrawn. In Clause 1, Amendment 2, Lord Moynihan of Chelsea.
My Lords, I rise to move Amendment 2 and should start by apologising to noble Lords if anything in my moving of this amendment is maladroit or otherwise at fault. It's the first time I've moved an amendment, let alone a group of amendments. Why am I suggesting that Clause 27BA be removed in its entirety? The primary reason is the onerous inflexibility that it imposes on employers, the creators of jobs. The bill as it stands, in theory, works even for those key groups who, as has been reported widely, much prefer flexibility in their employment arrangements. To take just a few examples, students, working mothers, part-time creatives, casual workers of all stripes. That is because it's acceptable to them because they don't have to accept the guaranteed hours that the employer is required to offer them. They and other groups of workers, some of whom may indeed prefer to be offered guaranteed hours, will be required, the employers will be required to offer those guarantees, but once the offer is made, the employees can accept them or not. Thus, this clause creates considerable additional flexibility on the demand side. Many people looking for jobs will find those jobs more attractive. On the supply side, however, flexibility is enormously reduced to be replaced by stark uncertainty for all employers, but in particular for so many sectors, such as the NHS, such as hospitality, retail, care work, the gig economy, delivery driving, Christmas work, warehouse work, and so many more. The absolute importance of flexibility to the employer can hardly be better illustrated than in the reports on the Guido Fawkes website as to how both unions and the Labour Party itself have happily offered zero-hour contracts in the past. At second reading, I stated that this bill in general will kill business across the country, serving to shrink rather than grow the economy. This unfortunate clause is just one part of that in this bill, but an important part. In general, as I've just discussed, on the demand side, the removal of significant elements of flexibility creates distortions in the employment market, leading to employers, in many cases, being far more reluctant to offer employment. In consequence, the level of employment will fall, not increase. For smaller businesses, just creating the required offer in the first place will involve onerous costs in time and money just to create the offers required by this clause, making the employer highly reluctant to even start the process of seeking new employees. Some of the subclauses in this clause raise the likelihood in real life of employers doing their level best to covertly figure out which employees will be flexible and which will seek inflexible guaranteed arrangements. And having come to a conclusion, the employer hires the one who wants flexibility and not the one who doesn't. That, of course, destroys the whole intent of this clause. The government might derogate such behaviour by a small business employer, but then few in the government have ever run a business. A further problem is that the clause envisages the employer having to go to all the lengths of creating the guaranteed hours offer and to present it to the candidate employee without having any idea whether the candidate will take the offer or not. This imposes considerable friction and inefficiency on the economy and more unnecessary costs on the poor, benighted employer. Now, interestingly, my Lords, I read through the several pages of this clause. Quite possibly I read them ineptly, but I cannot find anything about what happens in a hypothetical situation where an employer presents the required offer, then says to the prospective employee, will you be wanting these guaranteed hours? And then if the prospective employer says yes, the employer just doesn't make an offer of employment to them. It seems odd that I can't find that. Maybe it's there somewhere. From my view, of course, if the ability of the employer to renege in that way after having been forced to make that offer is in fact there in the bill, it would be a good thing. The government may or may not agree. But even were I to be right in saying that this loophole exists in the current drafting and the government, now having been alerted to it, were to choose to close that loophole, it will just drive similar behaviour by employers underground. This bill is driven in great part by a belief in what is fair to employees and so forth. Fairness is a word so often used, I have seen in my short time in this chamber. The word outcomes is not used so much. However much the government's view may be as to the crucial importance of fairness, with the best will in the world, the government drafters who focused on fairness will not have been able to bring to the issue anywhere near the level of seriousness as to outcomes that a business owner facing survival or destruction for their business will be viewing this matter. My Lords, this clause is just one component of an extensive and intrusive bill that will, if implemented, see the UK's economy further driven into the ground, with more and more parts of that economy and key players in the economy either becoming economically inactive or, as we are seeing on a daily basis, leaving the country. In the report stage, I imagine my party will oppose the entire bill, but in the meantime, I state that the bill can be significantly enhanced by removing this clause in its entirety. My Lords, I beg to move.